Do you remember your high school history textbooks fondly? Do you have a signed copy on your desk and await with anticipation for the writers to compile their next edition? If you were like most history nerds, you either hated your history textbooks or got into history despite them. Or more likely, you never read them at all. If I'm mistaken and you had a high school history textbook that you actually enjoyed and made you feel excited about history, please comment below. In fact, tell us all your history textbook horror stories too. Those of us that got into history got into it because of something other than the garbage they made us read in school. I'm a history teacher and I'm super passionate about history. I can dig into the most scholarly journal that would put many professors to sleep. But tell me I have to read a high school textbook and I'm gonna run screaming from the house. So what is wrong with them? They all seem to take the same philosophy that students need to know all of history. So we can only tell them just a tiny bit about each story. Students then learn nothing about anything because the story was so short and uninteresting, and they are followed by another short and uninteresting story. They can't possibly be expected to remember these seemingly disconnected topics. Textbooks in general, they don't tell a story. They attempt to tell like 4,000 stories and do it pretty poorly. Let's see a textbook that brings this idea of storytelling to life. The word history and the word story are cognate. This means that in the distant past they were actually the same word. History should tell a story that happens to be true and uses good source material. Then after we make them read these boring stories, we give them a multiple guess quiz to make sure that they learned it. At the end of the unit, we have them take a unit test covering everything they read in that unit. And then at the end of the semester, we give them this big semester test covering everything that they learned in the semester. And we expect them to recall all of these boring pieces of information that will have little impact on their life after school. Textbook writers need to look at the standards we have to teach. Do we need to teach them about the entirety of the world's history? No. Do we need to teach them a bunch of dates, people's names, and specific events? With a very few exceptions, no. Do we need to teach them how to take multiple guess tests? Definitely not. We need to teach them to research, to analyze, to evaluate, and to explain. These are the words used in the standards. We can do that with fewer topics. If we want to teach about ancient civilizations, why not spend the entire quarter, or better yet, an entire semester on just Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, Shang China, and the Olmec? Get some primary and secondary sources, have them analyze them, evaluate them, and explain them. If we're teaching US history, why not focus on a few important points in history? How about, instead of a week, we spend 9 weeks and just do the Emancipation Proclamation, Restoration, and the Civil Rights Movement? Connect with the English teacher who is teaching about the Harlem Renaissance and connect these lessons that you're teaching into what they're teaching and do Black history for an entire quarter. If you prefer women's history, pick some great speeches by important women in history like Sojourner Truth, Susan B. Anthony, Jane Addams, Geraldine Ferrero. Have your students read these speeches. Research the stories that surround these great speeches and then have them make a poster board or a speech about their research and have them present that to the rest of the class. These are just 3 of the ideas that I'm working on For more about the lessons I'm creating, check out my website, eyesofbread.org. You can find a link in the comments. But this is not about me. This is my call to arms to all history teachers and textbook writers out there. Pick up your quill, fill your ink wells, and write something that students actually want to read. Teach something that will inspire them to learn, something that will inspire them to research, to analyze, to evaluate, and to explain.